By October 5th, your reality either transforms or remains exactly where it is. No second opportunities, no extended deadlines, no postponed invitations. The universe operates on precision timing, and this window has boundaries. This might feel overwhelming, but consider this truth. Your most significant breakthrough may finally synchronize with all the preparation you've unknowingly been doing. The setbacks, the almost moments, the quiet endurance that burned within you. Everything was guiding you toward this convergence. When the calendar moves beyond that specific date, the portal seals itself. At this very moment, as these words reach your consciousness, you remain within the accessible zone. Every extended interval in your existence, each phase where momentum seemed frozen, threads together into this singular moment. You might not perceive the pattern yet, but those scattered elements have been orchestrating themselves in silence. October 5th transcends being merely another mark on the calendar. It represents the convergence point where all your accumulated energy crystallizes into something undeniable, provided you're prepared to receive it. This endless feeling overwhelms you, doesn't it? You invest energy relentlessly, day after day. You maintain your commitment, yet nothing appears to shift. It's like being trapped on an exercise machine, pulse racing, muscles aching, while the landscape remains static. This persistent whisper suggests that perhaps all this movement leads nowhere, that your time and effort dissolve into nothingness. Yet something deeper challenges this doubt. The voice that murmurs, perhaps the transformation is nearer than it appears. This internal conflict between skepticism and resolve exhausts you, but it also serves as one of the clearest indicators that you're positioned within an accumulation phase. Consider how atmospheric conditions develop before precipitation begins. For extended periods, they simply layer moisture upon moisture, creating the illusion of stagnation. This process can continue for hours, generating density, making you sense that the air itself has become trapped. But anyone who has observed patiently understands that storm systems are never dormant. They're accumulating mass, building energy, containing everything until that precise instant when the heavens release. Your existence frequently operates through this same mechanism. The periods where nothing seems to progress are often when everything is being orchestrated for emergence. Historical patterns demonstrate this rhythm repeatedly. Consider Nikola Tesla. He endured countless experiments trying to harness alternating current, countless attempts. Each setback wasn't evidence that his vision was impossible. It was confirmation that he was refining his approach. The intensity increased with every miscalculation, but that very intensity signaled his proximity to success. Without that extended sequence of unsuccessful trials, there would have been no revolutionary breakthrough. You can visualize him in those moments, holding another failed prototype and confronting that crucial question: do I persist or do I surrender? His choice to continue made the difference. Athletes experience this identical season of postponement. Someone conditioning themselves during dark, pre-dawn hours before the world awakens might spend years without witnessing a single triumph. They could endure entire seasons of defeat, questioning whether the dedication is worthwhile. Then one victory materializes, and suddenly those years become meaningful. The hours of preparation weren't squandered. They were invested, establishing roots beneath the surface. Without those invisible years, the success on the field or track would never manifest. If you question them afterward, most will reveal it wasn't the victory that transformed them. It was the waiting, the continuous accumulation that forged their resilience. This truth deserves remembering. Difficulty doesn't indicate you've strayed from your path. It means something is maturing quietly, like seeds within earth, long before they emerge into visibility. What appears as silence is often momentum orchestrating itself backstage, arranging for the moment when things explode forward. This applies not only to legendary innovators or elite athletes, but to ordinary individuals attempting to navigate transitions in their own lives. Those extended plateaus aren't meaningless chapters. They're the foundation where roots establish themselves, preparing for growth that seems instant, but was actually building continuously. The most challenging aspect is trusting that what resembles stagnation is actually concealed progress. Waiting can appear empty, but it isn't. Just as clouds don't gather without purpose, and training doesn't occur without effect, your periods of apparent stillness carry significance. They're establishing foundations that will prove essential later. Eventually, the clouds part, the seeds emerge, the victory arrives. The reward may require time, but the accumulated pressure itself participates in the process. Gentle indicators of transformation begin appearing when the timing approaches, and most people overlook them until the change becomes impossible to ignore. How do you recognize when a turning point draws near if there's no obvious announcement? That's the challenging part. Existence rarely proclaims it. More commonly, the shift initiates quietly. You might sense things feel slightly different, or observe small elements moving in unexpected ways. These moments are so easily dismissed that most individuals write them off as random occurrences. But the truth is, they're often the opening notes of something approaching, like detecting the distant sound of music before a celebration becomes visible. Subtle rhythms, barely perceptible, yet carrying the hint that something greater approaches around the corner. The peculiar aspect is that these minute signals often surface when you least anticipate them. Imagine someone at their workplace feeling stagnant, believing their contribution goes unnoticed or lacks importance. Then, unexpectedly, their supervisor approaches them for discussion, sometimes constructive, sometimes supportive. Initially, it may not seem momentous, but examine it more carefully. It's an early sign that something about them registered. That interaction can indicate the advancement, the opportunity, or the acknowledgement they've been anticipating is much closer than they realized. The conversation isn't merely feedback. It's the signal that momentum has changed direction. History contains endless examples of this quiet preparation. Many business builders spend years hearing rejection, doors closing repeatedly. But occasionally, one element feels different. Picture a young entrepreneur exhausted from continuous dismissal who observes something subtle, an increase in client inquiries, or perhaps unexpected interest in a product that previously barely sold. To someone ready to quit, that shift would seem too insignificant to matter. But in reality, it's the fissure in the barrier that proves things are changing. By choosing to notice and respond to that small shift, the entire trajectory of the business begins to transform. That simple elevation becomes the indication of expansion they'd been pursuing for years. Scientific research actually provides terminology for this phenomenon. Our minds are constructed to detect patterns, continuously scanning for clues that don't quite align. Researchers have examined what they term near-success experiences, those instances where you almost achieve, but not completely. Rather than discouraging, these moments intensify focus. They activate your awareness. Your attention becomes heightened. During those periods, The mind captures the smallest signal and prepares itself to pursue more intensely. So when a subtle opportunity presents itself, your brain is not only capable of recognizing it, it's already developing readiness to engage. The indicators can manifest in various forms. Sometimes they disguise themselves as unexpected opportunities, small chances materializing from nowhere. Other times, it's emotional states lifting after weeks of wait, glimpses of clarity when just previously, everything felt obscured. For some, it may appear as simply as new individuals entering their sphere or connections forming that previously weren't available. These delicate cues often feel too small to announce themselves boldly. But truthfully, they whisper that transformation is already moving toward you. If this resonates with your own experience, if you're recognizing these subtle patterns in your life, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay connected with these deeper explorations of consciousness. Here's why this matters. You cannot manufacture these signals, but you can recognize them. The breakthrough doesn't arrive with fanfare. It arrives with whispers. The gentlest shift in circumstances, a small spark of encouragement, the most subtle pattern indicating something new. If you're observant, you'll sense that these aren't isolated incidents. They're signals inviting you to prepare, to position yourself, to focus your attention. Most people miss these signs because frustration intensifies simultaneously. The exact moment the shift is nearest is often when discouragement speaks loudest. That's the strange contradiction. You can be incredibly close to the transformation, but because it's quiet and small, it feels easier to assume nothing is happening. Yet those who lean forward and notice, they're the ones who step through when the breakthrough finally materializes. Why do the most difficult moments seem to appear right before things actually transform? It almost seems unjust. You spend weeks, perhaps months, investing effort, and instead of relief, your challenges multiply. Obstacles increase. Disappointments arrive consecutively, and you begin to wonder if you're pushing against something immovable. It's as if existence reserves its most demanding tests for moments when you're already at your limit, when you've already expended everything in your reserves. Yet that sharp edge, the place where you think you cannot continue, is often the location right before release. Consider how pressure builds within a sealed container. For an extended time, the heat simply accumulates, invisible yet constant, pressing upward. Nothing occurs on the surface, but underneath there's rising force. Eventually, the mechanism rattles. The sound of pressure escaping announces itself, and what was contained bursts into view. The heaviest resistance comes right before the release because something is actually transforming behind the scenes. Existence mirrors this pattern. The weight doesn't accumulate as punishment. It builds because you're nearest to opening, which is why things feel most unbearable at the conclusion. It often resembles excavating deep underground, scraping through the earth, perspiration flowing, exhaustion increasing. What you don't understand is that the stone wall before you measures only inches in thickness. Just beyond it sits treasure, waiting, but from your position, it appears infinite. Most people stop there, convinced there's no value in continuing. But had they raised the tool a few more times, the entire situation would have transformed. That's the cruel trick of the breaking point. It never reveals it's the final step. It only challenges you to persist once more. Michael Jordan experienced this tension in his actual life. As a young person, he was removed from his high school basketball roster. Imagine returning home that day carrying news that to most young people would feel like the end of a dream. The thought would intrude, maybe I'm not designed for this. But instead of yielding, he intensified his practice. He converted that disappointment into motivation, and that persistence carried him from rejection as a teenager to being recognized as one of the greatest to ever compete. That removal wasn't proof he was finished. It was a preface, a pressure point he had to navigate to become who he was meant to be. It's not limited to athletics. In laboratories and workshops, scientists and inventors endure waves of failure before results emerge. Experiment after experiment, formula after formula, until they're nearly depleted. Then, on what feels like the final attempt, the combination succeeds. The result manifests, the long search concludes. If they had stopped at their frustration point, we wouldn't possess half the innovations we depend on daily. Those failures weren't meaningless. They were preparation. Each one eliminated what didn't function, clearing a pathway toward the formula that finally did. Psychology has terminology for this grinding process: resilience. Angela Duckworth's research demonstrated that achievement often isn't about pure ability. It relates to persistence, the capacity to keep moving through the exact moments that seem designed to make you quit. And here's the remarkable part. Those emotional low points, the days where you doubt yourself most, are often the same days you are nearest to your objective. It's not coincidental. That pressure forces strength, developing resilience you couldn't build any other way. In other words, the wait you experience is never wasted. It's an instructor ensuring you're ready for the door when it finally opens. So when you observe that everything feels most difficult, that resistance accumulates thicker right when you need relief, remind yourself, this heaviness signals you're right before the opening. The darkest point means timing is about to break open. And that's why October 5th is not just another date on the calendar. It's that exact threshold confronting you. What if there existed one day, just one, that marked the point everything you've been working toward finally converges? That's what October 5th represents. Not a random square on a calendar, not just another turn of the week, but the point where all those hidden efforts, the waiting, the signals, and even the pressure that's been building collide into something visible. All the work doesn't scatter into meaningless pieces. It concentrates right here. But here's what most people don't understand about these threshold moments. They operate on quantum principles. The observer effect in quantum physics shows us that the act of observation itself changes the outcome. Your consciousness, your awareness of this moment, your decision to pay attention, these aren't passive activities. They're active forces that literally reshape what becomes possible. When you approach October 5th with the understanding that your focused attention is part of the creative process, you're not just waiting for something to happen to you. You're participating in the creation of what happens. Think about coherence in quantum field theory. When particles align their frequencies, they create something greater than the sum of their parts. Your months of preparation, your accumulated experiences, your refined intentions, they're like particles that have been slowly aligning. October 5th represents the moment when this coherence reaches critical mass. But coherence requires conscious participation. It requires you to step into alignment with the field of possibility that's been forming around you. This is where the mystical meets the practical. Take a moment right now and comment below with this phrase: I am entering coherence. This isn't just a social media interaction. This is you signaling to the quantum field of possibility, that you recognize what's happening, that you're choosing to participate consciously in this moment of convergence. Your declaration creates a resonance that amplifies the very forces that have been building toward October 5th. Let that land for a moment. Feel how different it feels to declare your readiness rather than simply hope for the best. This is the difference between being a passive recipient of whatever life brings and being an active co-creator of your reality. The quantum field responds to clarity of intention. It responds to conscious participation. And October 5th is the moment when your conscious participation can create results that seemed impossible just days before. Now, while we've explored the quantum mechanics of consciousness and threshold moments today, this really just touches the surface of what becomes possible when you understand how to work with the complete system of frequency transmission and field consciousness. If you're ready to dive deeper into mastering these principles, from breaking free from survival static to embodying the master frequencies that transform reality effortlessly, I've created a comprehensive guide that takes you through the entire journey from unconscious transmission to becoming the field itself. It's linked in the pinned comment below. The thing about this moment is that it won't linger forever. After October 5th, the gateway doesn't remain where it is. It closes, and not in some symbolic way. It seals in a way that means that exact opening will never be offered again. The universe does this. It presents a single precise window, and then it closes it. You don't get to circle back later when it's more convenient. The timing that surrounds this date won't repeat in the same form. Imagine it like a bridge lowered across a river. Once it touches the other side, you have the choice to step onto it. But after a brief time, it raises again. You can stand there and watch it lift, knowing you didn't cross when you had the chance, or you can walk forward while it's still there. That's how October 5th works. It's functional only in its moment, and once it moves, it doesn't return. There's another layer here that most people miss entirely. Time itself operates differently during these threshold moments. Linear time, the tick-tick-tick of seconds on a clock, that's just one way of experiencing temporality. But there's also what we might call coherent time, where past, present, and future collapse into a single point of creative potential. October 5th exists in coherent time. That's why the preparation you've been doing for months, the signals you've been receiving, and the future you're moving toward all feel like they're happening simultaneously. In coherent time, your readiness now affects not just what happens on October 5th, but it actually reaches backward and forward, reorganizing the meaning of everything that led to this moment and everything that will flow from it. This is why some people experience their entire life story reshaping itself during threshold moments. The promotion you get isn't just about the promotion. It's about recognizing that every challenge you faced was preparing you for exactly this level of responsibility. The relationship that begins isn't just about companionship. It's about understanding that every heartbreak was clearing space for exactly this depth of connection. Consider the harvest season. Farmers understand that fruit ripens for only a short spell. You leave it too long, the sun burns it out, or time eats away at its strength. The field looked promising for months, but the harvest window is brief. Miss it, and the reward fades. That's the same with opportunity. The growth you've been cultivating doesn't wait in perfect condition forever. There's a right time to act, and then it's gone. October 5th is that harvest date for you. You can see the same pattern play out on the biggest stages. Athletes step into one championship race that determines the shape of their entire career. Everything prior feels like rehearsal, but that one race becomes the defining snapshot. In politics, a single election can pivot a nation for years. One vote, one choice, one outcome, and nothing looks the same after. Moments like these are never open-ended. They're sharp, unrepeatable breaks in the usual pattern of time. If what you're hearing is touching something deep within you, something that recognizes this truth, then I invite you to subscribe not just to this channel, but to this frequency. Subscribe to staying aware when the quantum field is moving. Subscribe to recognizing when coherent time is opening opportunities that won't exist in linear time. Subscribe to being someone who participates consciously in the moments when reality becomes malleable. The community that's gathering around this understanding. We're not just content consumers. We're consciousness explorers. We're people who understand that awareness itself is a creative force. And the more of us who recognize these threshold moments, the more the world begins to reflect that truth. Your subscription isn't just about staying connected to videos. It's about staying connected to a field of awareness that sees possibilities others miss. There's real psychology backing this. Deadlines focus the mind. They strip away distraction and force attention into sharper clarity. That's why students suddenly find energy the night before a project is due, or why even working adults see their productivity spike when a firm cutoff approaches. Your brain is wired to treat time-sensitive moments differently. October 5th creates that sharpened state. It presses urgency with focus so that you act in alignment with what you've been preparing for all along. Now here's what quantum physics teaches us about observation and collapse of possibilities. Before October 5th, multiple potential futures exist in superposition. Different versions of your life, different timelines, different outcomes, all exist simultaneously in potential. But the act of conscious observation, your focused awareness on this moment, begins to collapse those possibilities into a single, manifest reality. This is why your state of consciousness as you approach October 5th isn't separate from what happens on October 5th. Your consciousness is literally part of the mechanism that determines which possibility becomes real. Most people approach threshold moments unconsciously. They hope for the best, but prepare for disappointment. They want change, but expect more of the same. This unconscious approach creates what quantum physicists call decoherence, where the field of possibilities collapses into the most probable outcome based on past patterns. But conscious approach, awareness of the moment, clarity about what you're choosing, alignment with the process itself. This creates coherent collapse, where possibilities that seemed impossible become inevitable. Think about entanglement for a moment. In quantum physics, particles that have been entangled remain connected regardless of distance. When one particle changes, the other changes instantaneously. Your consciousness and the field of possibilities around October 5th are entangled. Your state of awareness directly affects what becomes possible. This isn't mystical thinking dressed up in scientific language. This is how consciousness and reality actually work at the quantum level. Pause for a moment and reflect. Have you noticed your old patterns beginning to dissolve, perhaps without you even trying to change them? Share in the comments what shifts you're experiencing as you prepare for this threshold moment. But here's where it gets even more profound. There's something called the quantum Zeno effect, where the act of frequent observation can actually freeze a quantum system in its current state. But there's also the inverse, the anti-Zeno effect, where the right kind of observation can accelerate transitions between states. Your consciousness approaching October 5th is like a tuning fork that can either freeze your current reality or accelerate your transition into a new one. The key is the quality of your attention. Most people observe their lives from a place of anxiety or desperation,